"Help, something is wrong with my husband and daughter. They can't breathe." When first responders arrived at this quiet Houston home, they were prepared for a medical emergency. But what they found was something far more unsettling. The victims, a respected entrepreneur and his young daughter, were found unresponsive. At first glance, it appeared to be a tragic accident. But as investigators combed through the scene, a different picture emerged, one filled with contradictions, and one person at the center of it all. Her name was Dr. Vanessa Caldwell, a prominent Houston dentist, a woman of status, wealth, and influence, a wife, a mother, and, according to prosecutors, a mastermind. The motive? Investigators believed it was money, a staggering fortune she was certain would be hers. But there was one problem. The money? It never existed. This was not a crime of passion. This was cold. This was calculated. Deception, betrayal, a scheme so elaborate it left even seasoned detectives questioning just how far one person would go for a fortune built on lies. This is a story of trust shattered, of a carefully crafted facade, and the deadly consequences of a plan that unraveled with every desperate move. Dr. Linda Reyes had everything: a thriving dental practice in Houston, a sprawling estate in one of the city's most affluent neighborhoods, exotic vacations. Designer handbags are worth more than some people's yearly salaries. To anyone looking in from the outside, she was the epitome of success, a woman who had built an empire with her own two hands. But success like this doesn't come without questions. How did a local dentist amass such wealth? How could she afford the kind of lifestyle usually reserved for oil tycoons and tech billionaires? To those who knew them, the Reyes family was perfect. Daniel, a devoted husband; Sophia, a bright young girl with her whole future ahead of her. They were the kind of family you saw in Christmas card commercials, picture perfect in every way. But beneath the surface, something didn't quite add up. Rumors swirled about an inheritance, a staggering $37 million fortune supposedly waiting in a secret offshore account. Money that would solidify Linda's place among the city's elite. Money that would guarantee her family's security for generations. But there was just one problem. No one knew if the fortune was real. What seemed like a dream come true quickly turned into a nightmare. It started with a phone call. A voice on the other end, calm, professional. A man who claimed to be a lawyer representing an offshore account. The message was simple. Doctor, Linda Reyes was about to inherit $37 million. A fortune she never knew existed. Or at least, that's what she was told. The instructions were clear. To access the money, Linda had to prove she was the sole surviving heir. That meant eliminating any complications, any loose ends, any obstacles. Her husband, her daughter, they were obstacles. Linda chose a method as quiet as it was cruel, a tasteless, odorless substance, one that would work slowly, slipping past unnoticed, day by day, meal by meal. The symptoms started small. A wave of nausea after dinner, a sudden, unexplained dizziness. Then came the fatigue, the muscle weakness, the kind of exhaustion that settled deep in his bones. At first, Daniel dismissed it. Stress, he thought, a bad meal, a passing illness. But the days stretched on, and the weakness only grew worse. Sophia, too, began to change. The bright, energetic 12-year-old was now sluggish, unfocused. Her hands trembled as she held a pencil. She struggled to form simple sentences. Her young body, just like her father's, was shutting down, and no one knew why. Every calculated dose brought her closer to the life she believed was waiting for her. The luxury, the power, the fortune. It was all within reach. But there was one problem. Her plan wasn't foolproof. Daniel Reyes had been feeling worse by the day. The fatigue, the nausea, the sharp pain radiating through his body. It was relentless. No matter how much he rested, no matter what he ate, the symptoms never went away. If anything, they grew worse. He had no answers, no diagnosis, just a gnawing, inescapable feeling that something wasn't right. Hours before his body gave out completely, he made a phone call, not to his doctor, not to the police, but to a friend, someone he trusted, and what he said sent a chill down their spine. "I think Linda is trying to kill me." When paramedics arrived, Daniel was barely conscious. His body had shut down. His organs were failing. Blood tests were rushed to the lab. The results? Toxic poisoning. This wasn't a rare disease. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been slowly killing him. "My husband, he just collapsed. He's barely breathing." The voice on the line belonged to Linda Reyes, and something about the way she spoke didn't sit right with investigators. A search history tells a story all on its own, and Linda's, it told investigators everything they needed to know. How to poison someone undetected. How long does poison stay in the body? Can hospitals detect slow poisoning? But that wasn't all. Large sums of money had been funneled into an offshore account. Transfers made just days before Daniel collapsed. Investigators traced the transactions, trying to determine their purpose. And then, it clicked. Linda wasn't just trying to claim an inheritance. She was securing it, in advance. Then came the most damning piece of evidence, the only surviving witness to what had happened inside that home. "Mommy gave me special medicine, but it made me feel worse." Sophia had been given the same poison as her father. A special medicine her mother insisted would help her feel better, but instead, it had stripped away her strength, made her confused, left her helpless against something she couldn't understand. The lab results confirmed it, a lethal dose, administered in small amounts over time, but Linda had made one critical mistake. She assumed no one would question it. What she didn't know was that someone had been watching. For months, Linda Reyes believed she was on the verge of unimaginable wealth, $37 million, a fortune that would change everything. She had already started planning her future, the luxury homes, the overseas bank accounts, the freedom to leave everything behind and start over. But there was one thing she never considered, one truth she never questioned. The lawyer who had promised her millions never existed. He was a ghost, a faceless voice behind a screen. A scam artist had preyed on wealthy professionals, feeding them the same elaborate lie. An offshore inheritance, a legal loophole, a fabricated story designed to push people to the brink of desperation. "Sorry, but there is no inheritance. You've been playing." Every sacrifice she had made, every decision, every life she had destroyed, it had all been for nothing. She had murdered her own family for a fantasy. The following night, police made their move. Linda Reyes stepped outside, dressed in a silk robe, her hair still damp from a shower. She didn't ask why they were there. She didn't fight. She didn't speak. She simply held out her wrists and let them take her away. As she was escorted to the patrol car, her expression remained unchanged, blank, emotionless. But her mugshot told a different story. At that moment, Linda Reyes was no longer a successful dentist, no longer a wife, no longer a mother. She was simply a woman who had thrown everything away for a lie. The courtroom was silent. The air was thick with anticipation. Every seat in the gallery was filled. Reporters, former patients, neighbors who had once trusted her. They had all come to witness the moment when Dr. Linda Reyes, the once respected dentist, would answer for what she had done. It didn't take long for prosecutors to dismantle her defense, the poisoning, the offshore scam, the web of deception she had spun, believing she was on the verge of wealth beyond imagination. Piece by piece, they exposed her plan for what it was: cold, calculated, and deliberate. She poisoned her own husband. She poisoned her own child. She did it slowly, methodically, and without remorse. And for what? A fortune that never even existed. But the most powerful testimony came from the person she had hurt the most. Sophia Reyes had survived her mother's plan, and now she had to face her. She told me it was medicine. She said it would make me feel better, but every time I took it, I felt worse. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict? Guilty on all counts. For the charges of capital murder and attempted murder, this court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A once trusted dentist, a woman who had spent decades building a life of prestige and comfort, is now stripped of everything. Houston dentist, convicted in murder. Plot: greed cost her everything, the poisoning of a family, a chilling betrayal. The city of Houston was left stunned. Patients who had once trusted her with their health now questioned if they had ever really known her at all. Neighbors whispered about the woman next door, who had worn designer clothes, attended charity galas, and smiled for Christmas cards, all while slowly killing the people closest to her. Linda Reyes had wanted a life of wealth, power, and freedom. Instead, she would spend the rest of her days behind bars, with nothing but time to remember the family she had destroyed. Linda Reyes had everything: a thriving career, a beautiful family, a reputation built over years of dedication and hard work. But for her, it wasn't enough. $37 million, that was the number that consumed her. That was the fantasy she was willing to kill for. In the end, there was no fortune, no offshore account, no inheritance waiting to be claimed, just a lie, a carefully crafted illusion designed to manipulate and exploit. And Linda Reyes, she fell for it. She believed it so completely that she destroyed everything in its pursuit. But here's the question: does she regret what she did? Does she wake up every morning haunted by the faces of her husband and daughter? Or is she only mourning the life she thought she was about to have? And what about the people left behind? A daughter, forced to grow up knowing the person who was supposed to protect her was the one who tried to take her life. A community left questioning how well they really knew the woman they once trusted. If you suspected someone close to you was poisoning you, would you recognize the signs? And if you did, would you be brave enough to stop them before it was too late? This is just one of many stories of deception, greed, and crime that hide in plain sight. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling true crime stories from Houston and beyond.